for investment, what it means for entrepreneurs, and so on. Now, before we introduce ourselves, I think you might have two questions at this point. Now, one thing is, isn't it too early to talk about investment opportunities or entrepreneurial opportunities in Silk Road, One Belt, One Road project? Because it's, still an infant project, still actually a Chinese vision that is taking the first steps towards concrete reality. Okay, the second question you probably have in your mind is, well, this is a Chinese mega project, and you guys are talking about it like two Turks talking about China's project. And, well, actually, if these are the questions you have in your mind, we have actual answers for them. One thing is, yes, it's true. It's still perhaps a vision. The One Belt, One Road project was forwarded by President Xi Jinping in 2013. And since 2013, the Chinese are doing their best to go around the world to discuss this with their counterparts and to see what they can do together. And they have also taken the first concrete steps. They are investing in countries, investing in infrastructure. The railroads are now being built, and so on. But yeah, it's true. It's a bit early to predict if the projects within China's One Belt, One Road project will be effective as the Chinese are hoping them to be, and we are hoping them to be too. But nevertheless, the way I see it, it's infrastructure development blended with a larger, longer-term vision, which will in turn create opportunities for everybody involved. So it's not early to start discussing it.
Not at all, and it's probably a great time to be talking about the One Belt, One Road, because as we see today, the world is divided in terms of beliefs, in terms of frameworks, and there's a lot of talk about local issues that seems to be arising from globalization, and there's a lot of talk about anti-globalization and what's happening with international trade and everything. So a gloomy outlook is there, but there's also reason to be hopeful, and I think we live in some interesting times, and I think One Belt, One Road, or the OBOR actually makes it an interesting time as well. So with the willingness, the desire, and the necessity of China to expand and to become more global, I think this is not a turning point. I think globalization may be shifting geographies, it may be shifting its structure, its outlook, but it's not dying. And the One Belt, One Road is therefore very interesting.
It's true, and I think it's, we two Turks talking about it, I think there's a point there too, because, the way I see it is the Chinese One Belt, One Road project is actually a multilateral, multi-country project, which is pursued by the Chinese on a bilateral basis, country by country basis. So the Chinese are discussing with the Pakistanis, with the Turks, with the Israelis, and so on. But there is no One Belt, One Road project that brings together the Turks with Turkmenistan or whatever. So it's China and the others on a bilateral basis.
There are more than 50 bilateral agreements, I think, that are shaping the One Belt, One Road project. There are also multilateral agreements as well, but the bilateral ones definitely dominate the market. But like you said, I think it's not just about China expanding into different geographies. It's also about the change of China in itself. It's the industries in China are changing, the consumers are changing in China, and it's bringing up a lot of investment opportunities for the private sector as well. So, of course, the One Belt, One Road is more about infrastructure. It's more about bringing people together in terms of physical and communications networks. But it's also about what's happening in China, and that's another reason for people to be looking at that.
Yeah, but all right, but Chinese economy and Chinese project, whatever they are, including the OBOR project, are all about scale. Well, they are big projects. When we start talking about One Belt, One Road, for example, we say Pakistan, $46 billion of Chinese investment going to Pakistan. So, and it looks like it's government to government to a large extent at this period. The Chinese government investing in Pakistani public projects. And you're right, there's also private companies involved and will be involved in this too. But when we distinguish between private companies, like you have the large multinationals with the connections, which are maybe already doing business with China. Then you have the smaller ones, small and medium enterprises, maybe the startups, and so on. So do you think that there is something here, there can be something here for all the different scales in the private sector, or is it only for the big boys?
I do think there's a lot of investment opportunities in different levels of multinationals to small companies as well, including the startups. This is because the OBOR will change a lot of things, and it will mean that the investment in infrastructure will accompany some other investments in retail. It will accompany some other investments in media, telecommunications, e-commerce. And with the change in the consumers in China and in the larger parts of Asia, they are looking for more than just products now. They are looking for brands. They are looking for wellness. They are looking for health. They are looking for education. And in all these sectors, there's going to be tremendous opportunities.
I think in order to see the opportunities, we really need to start by truly understanding what One Belt, One Road is. Because I think the problem is many people understand it as a project that will connect China with Europe on an infrastructure basis, like building new railroads, building new highways, or improving the maritime routes. That's one thing, but it's more like total connectivity between China and the rest of the Eurasian continent. Okay, infrastructure is the biggest item on the agenda perhaps, but there is also, joint investment, joint projects, joint corporations, people-to-people exchange perhaps.
Definitely cultural exchanges,
so I think,
tourism.
Yeah, when you say it like that, you can clearly see the opportunities.
Yeah, the Chinese president has actually explained the vision that went beyond just business. It also included tourism, it also included cultural ties. So it's a huge project. It's a multi-level project as well. And there will be opportunities arising from all these different elements of the project. But one must also be careful in not jumping into these opportunities without care, because it's still early stages, like you said in the beginning. And there's also a wide geography here. I mean, we're talking about countries like Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Syria, Iraq, Turkey. All these countries have different problems, different challenges, and to maneuver between these countries, people need to be really careful about what types of regulatory, political risks they will be taking. And the challenges arise because it's not a one framework. It's actually, like we said, there's a lot of bilateral agreements here. There's some investor protection arising from state investor dispute mechanisms that are being input into these bilateral mechanisms. But people need to watch out for what stage their investments are and whether these investments are actually qualifying for OBOR, One Belt, One Road projects, and what types of protections they get from these. Because commercial insurance mechanisms that could protect you from political or commercial risks are not readily available there. And the mechanisms that are governing the public-private partnerships, the PPPs, are not necessarily well established. I would say these are the types of real challenges and probably things to watch out for.
I absolutely agree with that. And within the framework of what you just explained to us, I think it's also time now. It's not too early. It's now the time to watch for the opportunities, sometimes direct, sometimes indirect opportunities that will be arising for the smaller, medium scaled companies. For example, if I think about Turkey, now One Belt, One Road, I've been discussing with the Turkish government officials and Turkish business community, frequently what they expect from this. And the way I see is both the government and the public and the private sector are very enthusiastic. They have the expectations. And, well, usually these are large expectations, like modernizing the Turkish railroad system, connecting Asia with Europe through, Chinese technology, Chinese money, and so on. But if you look carefully, and within the framework what you just explained, we can already see some early examples. For example, a Chinese company, well, let's name it, Huawei, has invested in Turkey, and they will probably invest more. They are planning in new investments, and they are working with large GSM companies and fixed line companies and so on. But what we are observing is now that they are also investing in technology improvement and research development, and there are actual startups involved in this, technology startups. So they brought actually an opportunity here, and services sector. So One Belt, One Road is not just about large infrastructure.
No. It's also about technology.
Technology, services sector in general. Or I also believe that for the smaller entrepreneurs, there will be opportunities to work with the larger companies, larger local companies, which are linked with China, with Chinese companies, to be a part of their supply chains, to provide them services. So direct and indirect opportunities, I think they have already started to flourish. But as you said, it's probably not a completely rosy picture. Let's not get there. Probably there are some challenges on the way too.
Yeah, they need to watch out for the challenges, but definitely opportunities are worth chasing.
Yeah. So what would you then recommend for the investors in Turkey?
I mean, I would say that the Asian market is not homogeneous. I mean, it's got some very developed countries like Hong Kong, Singapore. I would say Malaysia is very investor friendly as well. It's one of the easiest countries to do business in. But then there's also a lot of these other countries that I just mentioned where you need to be very careful in terms of the operational environment. So it becomes very important to understand your rights, understand what your rights are within these bilateral agreements and multilateral agreements, and make sure that the projects that you are working on are protected within the framework of the OBOR and these agreements. I would say these are the things to watch out for, but the opportunities are bigger, I think.
They are, and let me also, with your permission, to add some more practical things to do as recommendation. Like I would suggest the companies, the entrepreneurs, first of all, to understand and to follow China's transition. China is changing. China is not a source of cheap labor, cheap production anymore. China is really changing. Look at Made in China 2025 project. Yeah. China is moving from moving its source of competitive advantage from cheap costs to higher value added, higher technology. $300 billion invested in 1 year in research and development. So these are things to watch for. And I will say that the companies here in Turkey and elsewhere should really watch the companies in their industry doing business in China and opening abroad, because they are very active and they are looking for partners. I know it firsthand. And also linked with the larger, Turkish companies and multinationals, like the company you are working for, actually, which has already a presence in China, and to see where they can locate themselves.
Yeah, great stuff.
Okay, well, thank you, and maybe we could have some time for just one question, if there is.
Okay.
You have a question? Oh, okay. I thought you were looking for the mic.
Okay.
Well, okay, then thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you also for listening. And since we are a bit running short of time and we have 2 more wonderful presentations today, I will, right away give the floor to the next presenter. Thank you very much.